wanna get high, man?
Let's stimulate your mind.
Get up, Chucky! What have we got here? A fucking comedian.
Rojan Kim?
Hello, and welcome to the Rojan Kim cast. It's me, and Rojan Kim, of course, the only person crazy enough to come on this show. I am now officially persona non grata in all of Hollywood, and of course on the social media sphere for my questionable views on gender and race. No, I'm just kidding. Nobody cares about my views and nobody cares about me because I don't have anything yet, which is also why I'm probably the only person on this podcast and listening to it. That's not true. I know there's a couple of you out there, so thank you to my loyal listeners, my aunt, who doesn't understand a word of this, but she's in it, you know, she's in it. She's fucking do or die, man. She's in there. And I appreciate that. Thank you for listening. Hello. It is the 6th? Yeah, it's the 6th of February. Haha. It's the day after the impeachment trial in the Senate where Trump was acquitted as was expected along party lines, except, of course, for one, Mr. Mitchell Mitterrand Romney, who had a crisis of conscience and was like, dude, he's guilty, except for the other one. First 2 counts. God, do you even care? Do you care about this? Do you care about this? Like, because I don't. I'm like, I do and I don't. Here's why I do, because, you know, I'm pretty stoked to have been a witness to 2 presidential impeachments in my life. I mean, that's pretty, you know, there's only been 3 in U.S. history, and I got 2 out of 3. That's pretty cool. You know, it's like, regardless of what side or whatever, you know, just in terms of political process, hey, this is historical, right? It's historical, so great to be part of history. I was there when the Berlin Wall fell. You know, I was there for 9/11, and now this, amazing. Okay. Another reason I care is because I care about politics, but not necessarily in the way I think most people do. And most people engage with politics through the news, through media, things like that. And for me, politics has always been a field of study, like I studied it in school and something I've been interested in. And really not from this like left-right, red, blue sort of dichotomy. I think the person I have to really credit for this is a professor I had when I went to school at Berkeley in my political science department, Anton James Gregor. I think he's dead. I mean, at the time he was like 80 or something, and that was 20 years ago, so like, I think he's not around. But his work lives on, and one of the things that so he was an expert on revolutionary movements, particularly Marxist and fascist movements of the 20th century, so late 19th, early 20th century revolutionary movements, you know. And one of the things that I really got out of his class was that our idea of what fascism is colored by propaganda, right? Or both fascism and communism. So, for instance, fascism is seen as evil and dark. And so fascism and communism were basically 2 reactions that countries coming to the world stage had against Western capitalism. And Western capitalism, of course, you have to remember, is actually Western colonialism, imperialism, right? So because of imperialism, you have these different philosophical, political strategies as to what to do as alternatives to liberal, quote unquote, liberal democracy, you know, like, quote, you know, just the West, and this idea of like, we're fighting for democracy. That was the real propaganda movement of World War I in America, where, you know, that's why we were fighting in these foreign wars, right? It was nothing, it wasn't about direct U.S. interests, or you couldn't really sell the war to the population, to the people, because it wasn't like they're being threatened. And at the time, the U.S. is very isolationist. So if you read Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky, he talks about how they made these newsreel films of German soldiers nailing Belgian babies to like the doors. And, you know, they basically made like fake propaganda movies showing that Germans are evil people and we got to go in there. Coincidentally or not, for the first Gulf War, for Bush Sr., I think it was Bush Sr. Yeah, the way we got in there is that his Kuwaiti girl came and said that Iraqi soldiers were coming into hospitals and stealing incubators from babies and bashing them against the wall. So it's a similar... So it's either just that's the tried and true thing you do as an invading army is to just run in and just bash all the babies, or it's a tried and true propaganda line to help get sympathy, garner sympathy for the public. You can look all this up. It turned out that the girl, the Kuwaiti so-called witness, was actually a Kuwaiti princess who would not be in a hospital or anything like that. She was actually like one of the elite of the society, and it came out that she made up the whole story, and the whole story was fabricated. She came to Congress and testified, and the whole thing was fabricated to garner U.S. sympathy and support. And it worked, and here we are. 30 years later. Now it's that. What was Gulf War 91 or some shit? Well, look at us now. Look at us now, 30 years on. 30, we're 2020 now, man. 2020. Sure, I guess we supposedly left Iraq during the time of the Clinton years, but we bombed the shit out of them and sanctioned them, We did go to war with them, essentially, just we didn't put troops on the ground. But we had a no-fly zone. We bombed the shit out of them. We starved. I think something like over 200,000 babies died from starvation. You can look this up, too. Madeleine Albright. Look up Madeleine Albright, Iraqi sanctions, right? And she's asked by, it's not Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer, whoever. Someone's asking her, more babies died in Iraq from starvation than people died in Hiroshima. Do you feel that that's justified? And Madeleine Albright was like, yep. She was like, 100,000 babies? Yeah. U.S. policy, which is more important. You know what I'm saying? So, if you think of it in terms of the Iraqi parents of those babies who were starving, this is before Iraq 2, right? This is post-Iraq 1, George Bush Sr. I'm talking about during Bill Clinton's time when they're being starved out. Their baby is starving. Would you consider the United States a democracy? Would you consider them a fascist power? What kind of power would you... sure, you're living under a dictatorship, but the whole reason your kid's starving is because of... Iraq not doing whatever America wants. That's the reason. That's why your kid's starving. It's nothing to do. Your kid wouldn't be starving if there were no sanctions, right? How would you think of America at that point? Would you say that this is a great democracy that believes in freedom and protecting people? Or would you think it was some kind of autocratic militaristic regime who seeks to just crush any resistance underfoot, under its might? I don't know. Kind of Roman, feels pretty Roman to me. But anyways, the great thing about Anton Gregor was that he eliminated to me the idea of the left-right dichotomy in our politics, in politics in general. Fascism is not evil, right? Communism is not good. That's sort of the kind of I don't know, at least in Berkeley, right? There's this idea that communism was misguided. Communism had the best interests of the people in mind, but it just didn't work out. Whereas fascism was always bad guys doing bad things, leading to bad results, right? And so Gregor challenged this, which is a little bit controversial, right? Because he's kind of, especially in Berkeley, which is very pro-commie, and just the idea to be like, hey, some of these fascists weren't necessarily Nazis, and maybe the Nazis weren't actually fascists. Why don't we define what fascism is so that we don't have to be talking in circles like this? Because it just becomes a label them, a derogatory. You might as well just say bad, right? You're bad. We're good. You're bad, right? If you think about it like Mao, look at the death toll on Mao and Stalin. It actually outnumbers the Holocaust. It's more than the fascist regimes. But for some reason, we say that that's okay. That was just policy failures. The Great Leap Forward, Stalin's... like Gulag program who killed everybody. Those were just, that wasn't fascist. That was just mismanagement. That was well-meaning, well-intentioned people who made mistakes. That's what it kind of comes down to. It's just they had people's interests in mind. They just they kind of fucked up. Whereas Mussolini, right? Guys like Mussolini. Hitler, I don't know, Hitler fascist, I don't know. Even the actual term fascist is questionable because Here's what Gregor taught me. He was like, everybody says the Nazis are national socialists, but they weren't national, nor were they socialists, right? And part of fascism is a very, very the primacy of the nation, right? The primacy of the nation. Where the Nazis went, where they jumped the shark was when they decided it wasn't about the nation, it's about the race, right? So they created this like this sort of racial hierarchy. So it's not based on the nation anymore, that the nation is the race. They equated racial, you know what I mean? So it's actually not fascist in the sense that there's no nationalism involved. This is actually something else, right? It's not socialist either. It didn't really believe in people. I mean, it created hierarchies of people, so it doesn't really believe that people that it didn't. The Nazis believed that the lower races should be enslaved for their labor. They didn't believe in the labor theory of value. You know what I'm saying? If they believe in the labor theory of value, then there would be no lower races, because there's no races. There's proletariat, there's bourgeoisie. You know what I mean? Everything is class structured. It's not racial. And that could be why, the fascists got a bad rap, because the Nazis became the sort of standard bearers of what fascism is. And then the whole racist thing, the fact that they were completely racist in their political leanings, that is what really colored what people define as fascism now. But dude, Stalin had pogroms against Jews. I mean, he was plenty racist too. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure Mao rooted out a bunch of non-Chinese, rooted out anybody who was seemed as counter-revolutionary, or reactionary, or whatever the words you use, bad, right? Whatever the bad is, right? And so really Gregor's, what he was saying is that these guys are not like opposites. You know what I'm saying? It's not like one's good, one's evil. They're actually both on the same side. They're both anti-democratic. Okay, essentially both anti-democratic. One is just saying that the state, it's all about the state and the people, that the people are the state, and the other one is just saying, nah, it's usually this guy. He's usually a dictator of the party. Saying that you are not the state. We are the state, and you are beholden to us. You know what I mean? Like the state comes before you. And it's essentially not that different. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of de-individualization. Because the West, what we consider liberal democracy, it puts the individual first, right? Individual liberty, individual rights, and that's the basis of everything. Whereas the communists and the fascists both believe that, no, that's not the basis. So, and I think the biggest difference, if you want to really, let's get into the weeds here, especially since you got to remember Marxism and fascism are coming up around the same time as reactions to both liberal democracy and each other, right? The Marxists don't believe in private property or the market. They don't believe in market forces. They believe that those are all manipulated. I don't know. Honestly, they didn't really provide any other explanation. They just didn't believe in it because they believed in the labor theory of value. They didn't believe in Adam Smith and this whole supply and demand bullshit and whatever. I guess what we would call Austrian economics at this point. They didn't believe in it. They said no. Labor theory of value, the amount of labor put into something is actually what the value of it is, not what the market decides, and that's how things should be. All right, well, we'll try that. So that's what whereas the fascists, they believed in the market and private property. They just believe that it needs to be subservient to the state so that, corporations, businesses, you can still exist, you can have market forces, but we are, we are in cahoots together. In some ways, you might say that could be like student loans. See how the government and the student loan industry is sort of colluding, you know what I'm saying? They're like together, and some could say that's like a fascist enterprise. Some might say the collusion of government and private forces, right? Of course, nobody's really saying that. Nobody's saying, hey, that's fascist. You could also say it's socialist, right? It's socialist, the government, in the sense that like the government is managing something that's supposed to be a public benefit, a public interest, a public utility, whatever, could say that as well. But in essence, it's not, right? So I don't know. That leads me to, what people are saying now because Trump got acquitted. You know what I'm saying? Here are the two big things going on politically right now, right? Trump just got acquitted. Okay. Super basically on party lines, just like everybody thought it would be. 3 years ago with the Russiagate thing, there were people saying that this whole thing is bullshit. Okay. There's nothing's going to come of it. The Mueller report drops. Nothing comes of it. People are going apeshit. They want Mueller to explain himself, so then they have this hearing. And then try to get Mueller to say that the president committed a crime or that he can't prosecute him because he's the president, but he is guilty of something. He's trying to get them to say, he's not saying it. He won't say it. He won't say it. The whole thing becomes a nothing burger, right? No, they're there. Nobody, all the people they talk about being arrested over this shit, fucking Manafort, Stone, Cohen, like all these people, if you look into it, none of them were actually arrested for anything having to do with Russian collusion, anything having to do with the investigation. Otherwise, they would have used that shit as proof, but they couldn't. They got nothing. It's all lying to Congress, some kind of like money laundering shit. It has nothing to do with the actual thing. They just made it seem like they do because of the guilt by association, but just look into it. Nothing has come of it. Suddenly, there's this impeachment push, and it has nothing to do with Russian collusion in the election anymore. Now it has to do with Ukraine and the idea that Trump... Here's the impeachment accusation, right, which is from what I have gathered. 2 counts, right? There's one is abuse of power, one is obstruction of Congress. The first count, abuse of power, it alleges that Trump used his position as president to try to get the president of Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden, a political rival. And that's why, and the real way he was going to do it is by withholding military aid. And by withholding military aid, what he's doing is putting the country in jeopardy because we have a fight between Ukraine and Russia that is going on right now, and we need them to fight Russia over there, or else we're going to be fighting Russia over here. That is literally what the Democratic case is. So that the impeachment, the reason he abused his power is because he's all like, this is what they allege. They're basically like, he's like, hey, Trump is going, hey, president of Ukraine, why don't you investigate Joe Biden, or else maybe you won't get this $100-some-odd million in aid, huh? How about that? The only thing is that the guy on the other end said, what? That didn't happen, right? That's the thing. The president of Ukraine was like, nah, I don't think that, what, really? And then they released the transcripts, right? And it doesn't look like that's what's happening, right? Is it? I mean, then there's like this back and forth. It's like, that's not the real transcript. That's not the real, where's the witnesses? There's no direct, all the witnesses the Democrats had in that, the House, so there were no witnesses in the Senate trial. The witnesses, none of them were actually there. None of them were there. They were like around. They kind of heard about it, but none of them were in the room, right? And none of them could possibly know what was actually going on in Trump's mind, because that's the allegation, right? Because the military aid wasn't withheld. They got it, which is something that Obama wouldn't do, frankly. That's the other thing that Democrats don't mention. A few years ago, it was their own president and their own party saying that we're not going to arm the Ukrainians against the Russians. What are we going to do? Start World War III? But I guess they want to. And so by withholding military aid, right, we're not helping the Ukrainians fight the Russians. Why are we even doing that? Why are we helping the Ukrainians fight the Russians? Why are we getting involved in that war? Why is it treason? That's what they're alleging. It's alleging treason to threaten to withhold that aid. The aid used by Ukraine to fight Russia. So it's a proxy war. So and that's treason? What they're alleging is that the president is going against the interests of the United States, right? But the president sets foreign policy. So what they're basically saying is that the president is supposed to be beholden to the national security state's policy choices, or else he's guilty of treason. Can you see how absurd that is? The guy who's supposed to be the head of the executive branch is committing treason by changing what he feels the executive branch should do. Like that's why it's a hollow case. Okay? In and of itself, I don't see how that's an abuse of power, considering nothing actually happened. I mean, what they're alleging is something he intended to do, which is, come on, good luck, right? How do you prove what somebody had in their mind when there's no physical evidence? Next, the obstruction of Congress. That is you just throw that shit out, because there's no such thing. Obstruction of Congress between the executive and the legislative branch. If the legislative branch subpoenas the executive branch can kick that up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court can rule on it. The Democrats didn't want the Supreme Court to rule on it because there is a chance the Supreme Court could have ruled in the president's favor. So they decided no, and instead just charged him outright with obstruction, right? So I don't know. That whole thing was bullshit too. That just seems like and Mitt Romney couldn't even vote for that one. right? That just goes to show you how much they had behind that. God damn it, I didn't want to talk about all this bullshit, the impeachment bullshit. But you see, like, that's the whole thing. This is why I never could get on board with it, because the Russia thing just seemed dumb, man. Just, I don't know. It just seemed like Hillary lost. It doesn't seem like she lost because of the Russians. It seemed like she lost because she was Hillary. I mean, that really is what it seemed like, right? And they didn't have their come to Jesus moment. Instead, they spent 3 years alleging Russian collusion, spent a whole other year trying to impeach Trump over Ukraine, not arming the Ukrainians, and now we're here. We're in 2020. It was the week of the Iowa caucus. We all saw the Iowa caucus debacle. You know what I'm saying? The Iowa fucking, it actually in Roman times they called something like this the caucus blockus. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of so transparent. It's like, I wonder why there's so much difficult when in the entire history of the Iowa caucus, there's never been any difficulty. Gee, could it be because Bernie won? Could it be? Because I feel like if anybody else won, they'd be like, look. But the fact that Bernie won, they're like, ay. And who is that? Who's doing that? The Republicans? No, Democrats. Is it the Russians? Is it the Russians' fault? Are they going to blame the Russian? They might blame the Russians. They might end up doing that. But it just seems to be so transparent now that the only reason there's any difficulty is because the person they didn't want to win won. The person Hillary said nobody likes. Remember how nobody liked him? It seems like a lot of people like him, right? Seems like a lot of people. And then Pete Buttigieg is coming out and being like, no, I won, dude. It's like, Pete, you're going to get trounced. You can get trounced by Trump, bro. He's gonna call you booty judge. Like he's gonna make fun of you, bro. He's gonna get, oh my god. And black people are starting to like Trump more. I mean, that's a secret thing going on. I'm telling you, you don't think it's real, but it's going on. You just can't be public about it because there's so much social pressure to be a Democrat or woke or whatever. But people are coming around. Okay, yeah. I don't support anybody. I don't care, but I'm coming around, okay? In the sense that, like, man, everybody's just attacking the fuck out of this guy, and he just keeps winning. I mean, I'm just starting to respect him. I don't want to. You're making this happen. The Democrats are making this happen, not the Russians, the Democrats, okay? Because here's the thing. It's like, if you really think about it, what's fascist? What's more fascist than trying to rig an election? You know what I'm saying? What's more fascist than that? You know? And I think both sides have done it. Bush, remember W, the hanging chads and all that, right? And the Supreme Court put him in office. That seems like a rig, right? And then fucking, so I feel like both sides are guilty of rigging elections, right? And getting away with dirty shit. And that just seems to be the thing that both parties do, that both parties are anti-democracy, essentially. Like if people decide to put somebody in that they don't like, they'll do everything in their power to undo it. Actually, the Republican Party didn't. That's what's surprising. The Republican Party is so fascist, they fucking hated Trump. Why didn't they get rid of him? Because they want to win, all right? So I think it's less about fascism, more about winning. And that's what this country is about, winning. And if anything, the way we became fascist is not in 2017, okay? That's ridiculous. I think we became fascist in 1945, right? After we won World War II, we were the premier nuclear power in the world. It was like a 5-year period where we were the biggest dick on the planet. No one could nuke us. We could nuke everyone. And that was it. We did everything. You know what I mean? And then from that point, there was a permanent military industrial complex. That's what Eisenhower warned us about, right? Watch out for the military industrial complex. They're like, okay, yeah, buddy. All right. We're never going to have a general again never had a general again as president and a bald guy. Okay, that just showed them no bald guys who know war. All right, because they're gonna fucking cockblock us. All right, trying to get into this war because 1950, what happens? Korean War, right? 1965, Vietnam War, right? And then we're reeling from the Vietnam War. We don't want to go into war. So then we have smaller actions in Grenada, right? El Salvador, Nicaragua. We had little tiny things. Oh, we were back. Iraq War 1. Vietnam syndrome's over. Vietnam, yay, we're back. I mean, not Vietnam. Iraq 1, yay, we're back in Iraq. Okay, pull back from Iraq. Okay, but you know what? We could bomb Iraq, bomb Kosovo and Serbia, Kosovo, boom, boom, boom. You know what? Did you know that action actually angered the Muslim population of that area, of the Balkans. Did you know that we trained both Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden to counteract communism? Like, we paid off those guys to fight both communism and with Saddam to fight the Iranians. And then did you know that they became enemies? So the guys that we trained and gave all this stuff to, we ended up targeting as enemies, right? Some friends we are. Anyways, I would contend that fascism, if it is indeed taken a hold in this country, has been there since the military-industrial complex, because part of fascism is the collusion between private enterprise and the public sector. And what better place to do that than the military, right? You get your private arms dealers, you make them national arms dealers, right? You give them contracts, you make them, and all these guys end up setting policy. There's a revolving door thing going on when people go from Raytheon to Congress and back to Raytheon. A lot of the Democrats seem to be pro-war, just like a lot of Republicans are. A lot of that has to do with their constituency, because a lot of these manufacturing plants for these weapons are in the United States. Right? You got to keep that machine going, right? You got to keep the war machine going, and this has become a big part of our economy. 50% of the arms sales of the United States come from America. We make money. We make a killing, okay? That's just simply what it is. We make a fucking killing. Doesn't the military-industrial complex seem like some kind of harebrained scheme, like this Always Sunny and Sunshine kind of like, hey guys, check it out. I got this great idea. What if we can make a killing, right? I mean, it costs a lot of money to help people, but we can make tons of money murdering them. What about that? And everybody's like, yeah. And then now we'll just do that for 40, 50, 60 years. How's that? Okay. So I would contend that the military-industrial complex has been here this entire time. And that's part and parcel, whatever. I can see that's the beginnings of, if you could say we're a fascist state or a proto-fascist state, I could see that that's really the beginnings of it. Right? And then you, of course, after Bill Clinton repealed a lot of the banking laws, and you had all these media companies merging, you had more and more collusion between corporations, more and more collusion between the government and corporations. Think about the stuff that Snowden revealed about how AT&T and Google and Verizon, they were giving backdoor information to the NSA and the feds. They were just giving up all our data, just giving it to them, right, for fighting terror. But if that's not collusion between private and public enterprise, I don't know what is, right? Seems pretty fascist to me if that's the definition we're using. I don't know, though. That's not the definition people use, though. Fascism just means bad. It just means someone we don't like. That's all. Both sides call each other fascists. And that's all. But you know what? Both sides are fascists. How about that? I say both parties are pro-war and anti-democracy, right? The military-industrial complex has definitely infiltrated both parties, right? The moneyed interest big banks, all of it's all tied up together. Read Wars of Racket, right? It's all tied up. Money, arms deals, right? Human trafficking, war, all of it's just tied up, and it's a bunch of guys just making money off of misery. Both parties support that. If you don't support that, you're a fucking Russian, right? Both parties love war, hate democracy, right? And when it really comes down to it, listen, they're not impeaching Trump over war crimes. They're not impeaching him over fucking Yemen. They're not impeaching him over fucking undoing the sentence of Eddie Gallagher, right? A guy who's probably a war criminal, and him undermining the justice system of the military, the military justice system. They could get him on that, they could get him on all these things. They could get him on fucking, he's violating the War Powers Act. That's just foreign policy. You could also get him on emoluments. I'm sure you could get him on some kind of, whatever, the kind of corruption that Joe Biden is actually being investigated for. I'm sure you could get him on that stuff. But you know what? They're not. You know why? Because they're just as guilty of it, them being the Democrats. They do the same shit. They're pro-war. They're pro-grift, right? They want to take the revolving door money. They want all that fucking sweet lobby money also. So in essence, you have two parties it's just like that Bill Hicks joke, right? I prefer the puppet on the left. I prefer the puppet on the right. That's literally where we are now. It's not even a joke anymore. That is what it is. So until people actually see that, I think we're just going to be stuck in this fucking baseball team kind of Bloods and Crips mentality, Apple versus Android. It's just branding. It's just branding is all it is, And until we bust out of the brand, then I don't know. We're just sheep, right? We're just consumers. We're just going to be sleep, right? And it's time for you to wake up to be what? I don't know. I don't believe in any of that. Honestly, I think the answer is saying fuck national politics. Seriously, like who gives a fuck? It doesn't affect you, man. Fuck the national shit. Go for the local shit. Go for the local shit. That's why I have my official sample ballot here for the LA County registrar, and I am looking through the list of 20 county judges. I'm going to have to investigate all of them just to see what I'm doing here when I'm voting for these local county judges and fucking just city council and stuff. I don't know. But honestly, that's what's more important. You know, that will affect my life way more than Trump or fucking Bernie, even like whoever gets into office. It's not going to affect me it's not going to affect me more than whoever is my city councilman, you know. And that's a fact. But it's a thing that's been lost on our country, on our political system, and really most people are just opting out, you know. And I don't blame them. I don't think you can blame the voter. Voting is like the market, man. Right? It's not, you can't blame the consumer for not being into what you're selling. It's up to you to sell them something, right? You can't blame them for that. That's, you know, I don't know. So I feel that here's where the hope for me comes in. Hope for me comes in shit like the internet, the way the landscape of media is changing, the way information is changing. You just can't lie and hide shit anymore, you know? Even if you control the media, you know, like the Jew. No, I'm just kidding. Even if you control the media, right? Like, you know, the media is probably overwhelmingly Democratic, right? Centrist Democratic. You know, I think fucking wool's being pulled off of people's eyes. People are starting to see that, hey, man, these fucking motherfuckers don't give a fuck about us. They're all fucking millionaires. They're all millionaires just fucking paying lip service to democracy, and meanwhile they're getting handouts and fucking cushy jobs from the very people they lobby for. So what about us, huh? What about the motherfuckers with no health care? What about the fuckers living check to check? What am I, Jimmy Dore now? Jesus Christ. Listen to your Jimmy Dore, Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, Michael Tracy. I'm just naming people. I'm just shouting people out like Trump did at his post-acquittal speech. Just shouting at people who were there for me. But all these people, you know, and Aaron Monte, all these people from the very beginning, they're not fucking Trump supporters, but all these people knew that this shit was bullshit, okay? Because they were doing actual journalism. Unlike the people who are supposed to be doing it, okay? So maybe that's what it is. Our institutions have failed us, but people haven't. People are still there. People are still out there. I believe that people still have the power. That's why they're so afraid of it. That's why they're trying to undermine democracy so much. Both sides. That's why the IO caucus is like, that's why, because democracy still works and they fucking hate it. Okay? And that's really the key. The key is who gives a fuck what they hate. They're supposed to hate us. They should fear us. Good. Politicians should be fearing the constituency, right? Because we should be able to vote them out. They should be under threat of being held accountable. So I think that's good. So I think the more we do it, the more we fucking hold people accountable, the more we call people out, the more we shine lights on all this fucking bullshit, the better shit will be. God, none of this was funny, was it? This is like, what, 33 minutes now? I said I wouldn't talk about the impeachment, fucking fascism, whatever, and here I am. Anyway, I think both. I think if we are in fascism, it's since a long time ago. And there is hope for this country. Because if we are truly in the grips of fascism, why aren't we all fucking in camps right now? Why aren't we all dead? Why are we allowed to even try to impeach the president? Why is there even, right? Think about where the dissent is and think about where it isn't, okay? So I say we're not in total fascism because at least there's the illusion of democracy, but we are in proto-fascism because neither party is against the actions of our foreign policy, right? In fact, if you were to go against foreign policy, they'll try to impeach you. So that gives me a little insight into where the fascism is, right? So there is some. It's creeping in. And if we're not careful, we're going to be the fucking empire, guys. I mean, we probably will be looked back on as an empire, right? So all I say is then fucking might as well just watch as much Disney Plus as you can. Eat all the burgers. Hey, who knows how long this is going to last, right? We got to be high on if we're going to be high on the hog, let's be high on the hog. All right? So anyways, I think there's hope out there. The hope is in the truth. reality, right? The more and more things are exposed, the more and more we're not going to be deluding ourselves, right? And hopefully we can catch ourselves before we fall into some crazy catastrophe. Hopefully, we'll see. I don't know. Either way, popcorn's ready. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. Of course, you can find me on the Instagram, on the Twitter, @RojanKim. Find me on Facebook even. I don't know. I use that too. Find me there. Find me online, rojankim.com. Find me on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Music. I'm all over the fucking place. Find me. Get at me. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. I will have more shows coming up, more dates, more podcast episodes, more.